Elden Ring is a revelation. In an industry dominated by content-light live service games, trend chasers, invasive monetization models, and stagnant formulas, we have FromSoftware's latest release, which might as well be a giant middle finger to all of it. It is a full-priced, self-contained, content-complete title. It is untarnished by predatory monetization practices. It is content to be different, and it has vision. A vision that oftentimes contradicts what the industry thinks is necessary for games to be, and it contradicts the pre-established assumptions of what a modern video game market wants. Well, 12 million sales in 2 weeks, nearly 1 million concurrent players on Steam a week after launch, and is still regularly polling hundreds of thousands, which is insane for a non-live service, primarily single-player RPG that isn't designed to be played forever and never end. It is one of the highest rated, most talked about, and most successful commercial video games in years, and I think that just goes to show you that a lot of what was previously believed to be true about video games is wrong. And look, the game's not perfect. It has plenty of flaws worth discussing, and I intend to do just that in my full review that will end up being my next major project, and it's already underway. But to very quickly give you my suggestion, play this game. I give it my highest recommendation, and while this video will feature footage exclusively from Limgrave, the game's first zone, my full analysis video will cover the game as a whole, so try and be as prepared as possible if you're concerned about spoilers. But today I wanted to primarily talk about the game's influence, to put its success into perspective, and to hopefully explain why I consider this to be such a landmark release for the industry as a whole, and also explain the absolute fervor of praise that has accompanied it. First, it's important to realize that this success did not come out of nowhere. FromSoft has been building to this and amassing fans for over a decade now. FromSoft released Demon's Souls all the way back in 2009, a game that at the time, Shuhei Yoshida, Sony's president of their worldwide studios, played it and famously said, "This is crap. This is an unbelievably bad game." And they had so little faith in it that they refused to publish it outside of Japan, a mistake they would later admit to making. However, the game released and quickly built a bit of a cult following, and they would follow up Demon's Souls with one of the most influential video games ever made. Dark Souls, the game that would catapult FromSoft into the spotlight, and a game so highly regarded and influential that it would literally spawn its own genre, the Soulslike. After Dark Souls 2, the low point of the series to be sure, but it still has quite a few fans in its own right, Sony would redeem themselves and rectify their mistake by publishing the oft-considered masterpiece Bloodborne. And to this day, you can't go a single Sony reveal event without Twitter being flooded with prayers for a sequel or a remake or a PC release, literally anything. Then, they finished off their Dark Souls trilogy with the very highly regarded Dark Souls 3, which would represent their most successful game to date, achieving a highly respectable 10 million in sales, and a few years later, they would grace the world with Sekiro, a smaller, far more focused title that really was kind of a side project for them, and all that side project did was end up winning Game of the Year. And 10 years on from Demon's Souls, the crap game that Sony didn't even think was worth publishing in the West, well, it represented the start of a formula and a fan base that had since grown to levels I don't think anyone could have imagined. A formula that had become so popular that that very same Demon's Souls, which wasn't worth publishing on the PS3, was remade as a premier launch title for the PS5. Well, some time passed, and at E3 2019, things reached a fever pitch. The first trailer for Elden Ring was released, and the anticipation was something rarely seen in the medium. Despite the game going dark for nearly 2 years, the community From had built kept its existence well known while it was gone. And really all that was known is that it would be From's next big RPG, it would have DNA similar to Dark Souls, and that it would be the biggest game they ever made. That alone, along with the trust and belief that FromSoftware had earned from their previous titles, was all the fanbase needed. It even won Most Anticipated Game twice at the Game Awards, and when the game was finally shown, it did not disappoint. And by this time, the hype was so high, and the excitement was so widespread, that it was hard for anybody who follows gaming not to feel it. The enthusiasm of the core audience spread throughout the gaming audience at large, and before you knew it, people who had never played a Souls game before were interested. And equally important, even if certain people played it and didn't like it at first, due to that enthusiasm the game garnered, I think there were a lot of people who played past the point they would have usually given up just to see, what am I missing here? I'm going to keep trying and see if I can understand this, and I think even more people were pushed towards that click moment in the process. But that's not the lesson. That's not the revelation. The revelation is in how From Software grew their fan base, how these games became so popular. Think about it. Let's go back to Dark Souls. Think about the state of the industry when it released back in 2011. Think about the types of games that were popular. Call of Duty was at its peak in the Modern Warfare and Black Ops era. Cinematic action games like Uncharted were all the rage, and then here came Dark Souls. In an era where publishers and developers all thought, oh, well, we need to make all of our games be twitchy and offer instant gratification, Dark Souls offered animation-based melee combat, which rewarded patience and dedication. In an era where publishers and developers thought, we need to hold the player's hand, can't let them get too confused. Oh no, what if they might leave because they don't know what to do? Dark Souls offered an obscure and obtuse world design where your goals were only vaguely explained, and finding the correct path was left to your own personal discovery of it. In an era where games were becoming increasingly easy and challenge was being pushed aside, being replaced by spectacle, again out of fear of frustrating players, Dark Souls was uncaring and punishing because it believed victory was sweeter if you first had to struggle for it. In an era of cinematic storytelling, where games were becoming increasingly like movies, Dark Souls told its story almost entirely indirectly, through the environment, or via item descriptions, with many story elements being inconclusive and left to interpretation. It defied the industry, and its lineage has continued to do so. But most importantly is it defied convention while also being an exceptional game. Its gameplay is so distinct and unique that it again created its own genre. The world design, while obscure, is considered to be some of the greatest pieces of level design in history. From Software's art direction is amongst the best in the industry, their character design is continuously astonishing, their music is revered, and their storytelling is not only unique, but does a fantastic job of bringing its community together. Now, the secret is not that they looked at the trends and did the opposite of what everybody liked. No, the actual secret is that they realized that I think people can like other things too. The industry currently is very data-driven, focus group-driven. It's very much about identifying what's popular and then replicating that. What games are popular on Twitch? What games are drawing the most engagement? And what are they doing that we can apply to our game to try and do the same thing? To try and tap into that same audience. And if the gaming market at large tends to favor one thing, then everything that might contradict that is on far too many occasions mistakenly considered unviable. This isn't true. Elden Ring has proven that it isn't true. Think of it like this. Let's look at battle royales, which is obviously the trend of today. But battle royales are a direct slap to the face of what was trendy 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was all about very fast, twitchy, instant gratification, and so scared of frustrating you that most games removed the respawn timers. If you had told publishers back then that you want to make a game built around a one-life mode where dying meant you got sent back to the main menu or had to wait for your team to finish, and it could be upwards of 5 minutes before you got to the next match, and there were oftentimes minutes at a time where you wouldn't even see another player, and you would probably end every game with only a handful of kills, and only a handful of people out of 100 or so would actually get to win. You know what they'd tell you 10 years ago? They'd say, that's not viable in today's market. That's not what people want. And they'd be wrong. Because all of those elements do resonate with people. The respawn limitations and limited lives, the less frequent encounters, increases intensity. And to survive from start to finish and win a game that 100 other people started also trying to win, well, victory feels 100 times better than winning a typical deathmatch. And it's not to say one is more viable, but maybe they're both viable. And maybe not every game needs to be a battle royale now either. Dark Souls found success 10 years ago despite being nothing like the trends of then, and Elden Ring is finding an even greater amount of success today despite being just as different as the games considered popular now. Additionally, let's imagine a chart meant to gauge the interest of modern gaming audiences. And I'm not saying these are accurate, if anything I'm over-dramatizing it to show my point, but let's say 80% of gaming audiences like shooters and battle royales, and only 20% may be naturally inclined to enjoy something like Elden Ring. Now, the incorrect interpretation would be that Elden Ring is not viable, and the inclination is to try and tap into the market share you assume to be greater. But that market share is already grossly oversaturated. Fans of those games have dozens upon dozens of options. I mean, there's like 5 battle royales alone that are currently extremely successful in the market. If you make a battle royale, you're fighting an uphill battle because your target audience is already playing Warzone, in Apex Legends, in PUBG, in Fortnite. Your audience is already being catered to. They have options, and it doesn't matter that there's tons of players because there's tons of games for them to play. So there may be far less people that would be interested in a game like Elden Ring. It might even be 2 out of 10 people. There may not be as many people who want a super difficult, punishing, hardcore RPG with a minimal sense of guidance. But for everyone who is looking for that, you'll get them all. And due to how unique it is, the people who do like it will probably find it more profound, and you'll find that to be exactly the case with From Software titles. If you have a truly great idea that's different, you can find success. And Elden Ring is a truly great idea. FromSoft games are the type of games that, if they resonate with you, if they click, they usually shoot to the top of your favorite games of all time list. It's a beautiful recipe of not only being a good game, not only being distinct in the market, but for From's games in general to naturally galvanize communities through their design philosophies. The difficulty in their games creates a sense of great accomplishment. The frustration and tension you may feel translates into an increased sense of euphoria when you do finally overcome a challenge, but it also brings people together. It creates stories you tell other players. You discuss amongst yourself different strategies and methods. Sometimes through these conversations, you discover options you didn't even know existed. It drives content, YouTube videos, guides, what the best gear is, what the best strategies are, and equally important, it drives players to the content, seeking help or perhaps just interested in how everybody else beat the boss and comparing it to your own strategy. This extends to the world design itself. The minimal direction and From's trust in leaving progression up to a player's own intuition heightens the sense of discovery and drastically increases the sense of exploration. Discovering the path through your own merits is more rewarding and likewise brings the community together once more. Sharing what you found, secret underground cities, entire zones hidden behind illusory walls, powerful items well off the beaten path. Again, more guides, more things to find, more things to share, and more reasons to come together. This is not an unintentional side effect. Working together to overcome a shared experience of obstacles is a philosophy the game itself incentivizes. Ghosts of other players passing by on the same journey, yet on another plane. Bloodstains which highlight the echoes of your peers and their failures, which may warn you of oncoming threats or offer insight into a humorous mistake. Players can leave messages for each other, revealing secrets or hinting at the solution to puzzles and objectives. Try finger, butthole, what could it mean? And lastly, if the sense of collaboration wasn't strong enough, you can summon players directly into your world or join theirs to help each other overcome obstacles together. Even the storytelling itself drives community engagement. The indirect nature of From storytelling via the environments, items, and little bits here and there via dialogue create a story that is often put together like a puzzle, and the community has spent years putting From stories together, discussing theories, analyzing clues, and there are YouTube channels with millions of subscribers built just around sharing the stories hidden within these games. Everything about From's design does an astonishing job of bringing people together, which is why certain elements like traditional easy modes have been met with backlash, because the people who play these games have felt the power of these interactions firsthand, and they want to preserve that. And over the years, From has gotten more and more people to try these games, but most importantly, it's retained them. Once it hooks you and you become enveloped by the satisfaction these games provide and the sense of community that has been built around them, it makes you want to share it with other people. That's why these games have grown. Through word of mouth, through encouragement from players who desperately want more people to experience the same things they have found so profound and meaningful. Just a couple days ago, I was in a Discord server with some friends and one of them hadn't played a Souls game yet. He didn't think he'd like it, he thought it might be too frustrating and didn't want to spend money on it. And I kid you not, one friend spoke up and said, "What platform are you on? I'll buy Elden Ring for you right now and you can ask us when you need help." Now, how many games have you played that are so good that you're willing to buy it for someone else just so they can experience it too? Just to have one more person to share it with, to have one more person to talk about it with, to enjoy it with. Whatever nonsense you've heard about gatekeeping or elitism or whatever myth is perpetuated by a few bad apples, the reality is these games encourage the opposite of that. These games encourage coming together like nothing I've ever experienced before. And it's that sense of belonging, that enthusiasm, that passion, that's why Elden Ring is where it's at. The reason a hardcore, difficult new IP just took the world by storm is because millions of people vouched for it. Because millions of people have been so deeply and profoundly impacted by these games that they have made it their mission to get as many people to play them as possible. Because they want more people to feel what they've felt. And that's powerful. That's compelling design, and that's the exact type of game I've fought for the past 5 years on this channel. Not so every game can try and do what Elden Ring does, but so that every game can feel confident in being different than Elden Ring, different than any game. I want games to have the confidence to stand on their own 2 feet, instead of constantly trying to piggyback off of their peers. And I think another reason Elden Ring has become so successful and received so much fanfare is that the industry has stagnated so severely and the market is flooded with disappointment after disappointment that they've almost put Elden Ring on a pedestal as their champion, so to speak, as the shining example of what games could be. And I find myself included in that lot. And it's not because the game's perfect. It isn't. It's flawed. It has big issues. But Elden Ring doesn't excite me because it's perfect. I'm not even looking for perfect video games. I'm just looking for games that fucking try, that have some confidence, some gumption, some integrity, some character, and some vision. And I want you to play a game like that. In closing, the industry in this medium is way too new to assume there's only one way of doing things, to pigeonhole the infinite possibilities of game design into a narrow set of accepted design principles. I mean, just look at some of the comments we've seen come out from other developers. Peers from the likes of Ubisoft and Guerrilla Games and even Blizzard criticizing Fromsoft's design, and as tasteless as that is, I think it just goes to show you how out of touch a lot of developers are. And I'm not going to rehash it or link the tweets or even show who wrote them here. There are already 100 videos talking about them, but I will read a rather infamous one from a UX designer at Ubisoft. The fact that Elden Ring scored a 97 on Metacritic is proof that game reviewers don't give a flaming poop about a game's user experience. My life is a lie. Now just think about that. Think of how narrow-minded you'd have to be to think that. Game reviewers are users, dude. Everyone who plays the game is a user. If they're not complaining about the user experience, then that must mean there's more than one way to design a user experience. You're not wrong because your way is wrong. You're wrong because you think your way is the only way. And unfortunately, this narrow vision of what games can be is often only altered when a rare game succeeds in spite of them, like Elden Ring. And then instead of that vision broadening, it just refocuses. The industry should not look at Elden Ring's success and then try to make every game hard. They shouldn't remove markers from every map, they shouldn't make every game a Souls-like, but they should question their current methods. They should expand their horizons of potential design, and they should stop being afraid of being different. Who knows how many brilliant games were discarded because they were considered unviable? How many franchises have strayed from what originally resonated with their fan bases in an attempt to chase the new big thing? Embrace unique design, because it might not be what's dominating the market, but it might be just what the market is looking for. And that is the revelation of Elden Ring. That the industry is wrong. Their idea of what a game has to be successful is wrong. Their idea of what resonates with players is wrong. Their idea of how to keep players engaged is wrong, because they're not leaving room for other ideas. And now as we enjoy Elden Ring, we await the games that will inevitably be created due to its influence. And I only hope that the right lessons are learned this time. Because games can be so much more when they're not trying to be like other games.